All right, friends, here we are again. David Horton here. Let's go. So we will be in Daniel chapter 7, and we'll go through chapter 8, verse 14 tonight. Let's do the whole sharing of the screen business. Boom, boom. And here we are. So this is week 5 of our Bible study of Daniel. Wow. After this, we have 3 more Wednesdays to go. Okay. Then I'm gone from your life. You can put me behind you. Okay. Yep, I'm gone. Deuces. No, to tell you the truth, let me just do a shameless plug. I've had lots of folks in the past 9 months go, gosh, didn't you save the recordings of that Bible study on Revelation? And the answer is no, I didn't. They're gone. So that means I got to teach it again. So that'll probably be the next study that we do is Revelation. I'm really into apocalyptic literature these days, mostly because we live in really weird times. All right, so you'll note that I like to start things with review just to kind of set the stage. So Daniel, as we've talked about, is really split up quite cleanly into 2 sections. You could think of them as acts in a play, Act 1 and Act 2. And Daniel makes it quite easy in that there's, it's actually, since there are 12 chapters, it's cleaved into 2, part 1, part 2, verses 1 through 6, then verses 7 through 12. We have gone through part 1 of Daniel so far in this study, okay? So chapters 1 through 6, those are what we call court legends. All of these, all the passages we've studied thus far have to do with Daniel being in a royal court, either the royal court of a Babylonian king, or we got to Darius the Mede last week, probably referring to the actual Persian king, Cyrus the Great. And I'm not going to go one by one through these. These are just the names of and a breakdown of the court legends of Daniel, okay? I said in our first week that few, if any, of these historically happened. It's because Daniel's not really concerned about what historically happened. Daniel's concerned about what will ultimately happen. And that is that all peoples, nations, and kings will bow to the sovereignty of God. We are to live like that in the present. Okay, so part 1, part 2, cover part 1 so far. Another way of dividing up Daniel is between the Hebrew sections and the Aramaic sections. Okay, so there's a break in chapter 2 where the Hebrew switches over to Aramaic, and you go, well, who cares, right? Well, the Aramaic section is really interesting because it follows what's called a chiasm. We talked about this word before. Actually, let me put it in the chat so you know kind of how it's spelled. C-H-I-A-S-M, the chiasm from the Greek letter chi, or X, chi. Kind of see how it goes in and out like an X. In a chiasm, I color-coded it here. You have stories that run parallel to one another, so they have the same meaning. But as you go deeper and deeper into the chiasm, into the center, you find the central core meaning of that block of teaching. So this goes back to why is it important that Daniel is broken up into Hebrew and Aramaic? Because in this Aramaic section, the main idea of this section is found in here, in that conversion story of Nebuchadnezzar and the writing on the wall. So to further illustrate, okay, we looked at these a few weeks ago. You'll notice how I copied and pasted here. So the meanings of kind of the basic meanings of these stories, I kind of color-coded for you. And the central message that Daniel really wants us to get out of the Aramaic section of the book is here in gray. The current evil empire will be held accountable. Okay. Remember, Daniel was writing during a time of great oppression of the Jewish people in Jerusalem from the Greek Empire. And he wanted justice. He wanted justice on behalf of his people. These were oppressed people. These were, their families were dying being thrown in jail. They couldn't practice their faith, and they wanted accountability. And we see that accountability in the story, in the conversion story of Nebuchadnezzar. He actually goes through a transformation. He's no longer an oppressive jerk. He worships the God of Israel. And in the writing on the wall story, where Belshazzar, the last king of Babylon, he is deposed and is killed. There's accountability there. So we can split it. All that's to say we can split up Daniel into the first half, the court legends, and then the last half, which will start tonight, these apocalyptic visions. You can also split it up into the Hebrew section and Aramaic section. And I find that helpful because you can really see some core meanings. Okay. Now, tonight we're going to start the apocalyptic visions of Daniel. It's about to get weird, folks. You're going to go, what was this guy smoking? Don't know. No. They don't sell it in Houston. Apocalyptic literature is fun. I really enjoy teaching it. I just want to go real quickly through these bullet points to kind of remind us what we're talking about. So apocalyptic literature is a genre of literature, and really the only two books in the Bible that fit that genre are Daniel and Revelation. You've got bits and pieces of other books that fit the bill of apocalyptic literature, parts of Ezekiel, Jesus and the Gospels. There's some little apocalypse in there. But as far as entire books, we've got Daniel and Revelation. So Daniel's going to get these visions starting tonight in chapter 7. An apocalyptic vision, I put here, is a diagnosis of the present for the forecasting of the near future. Okay? Daniel is having these visions about things that he believes will be happening quite soon, not things that are going to be happening 1,000 years from now. So that's important whenever we talk about Revelation or Daniel. They weren't talking about 2,000 years or 100, even 100 years. They were like, surely next month, maybe next year, in the near future, because they were doing a careful reading of the present. Okay. Apocalyptic visions, they follow what's called pictorial logic, not propositional logic. Propositional logic is what we typically use. It's X equals Y. If this, then that. Propositional logic is what we use in science and math. Everything follows a logical pattern, okay? God created on the first day, and here's what he did. He created on the second day, here's what he did. Third day, here's what he did. Very easy to follow logic. X equals Y, and always equals Y. Pictorial logic is quite different. Pictorial logic uses pictures and images to convey a meaning. So X can sometimes look like Y, can sometimes look like Z, can sometimes look like B. It all depends on how you interpret the picture. Okay, it's the realm of poetry and symbols. Okay, that's what Daniel is going to use in these visions. He's going to hit us with picture and image after image after image. Okay, we use in our day memes and GIFs. Some people call them GIFs. I say GIFs, right? We scroll through our social media feed and you see all these memes after memes after memes because that picture there can convey something that words cannot. That's why you have apocalyptic literature. You're reading kind of like a meme after meme after meme. These vivid pictures that Daniel gives us that have their meanings, but they're harder to follow because it's not X equals Y. Okay. Apocalyptic visions, they assume that there are these invisible forces at work in our world, right? Call it spirits, call it spiritual warfare, call it demons, whatever it is, there are hidden things working out here, okay? From a sociological perspective, right? There are, invisible ways that we humans relate with one another that you can't really see, but they're there because they just kind of control our systems. So racism is a good example of this, an invisible force that has real consequences in our world, right? Materialism, consumerism, you can't really touch it or see it, but it's this hidden force behind the scenes. What apocalyptic literature wants to do is come and unveil those forces. Okay, say this is what is driving our current time, right? I could get up and preach a sermon on materialism and how materialism has just infected our culture, right? That would be kind of apocalyptic. I am unveiling something that is working on us from behind the scenes. Okay. Real quick, apocalyptic visions assume that there's a divine realm and an earthly realm. They impact one another. You'll see tonight where we're going to travel to the heavenly realm, then we're going to come right back down to the earthly realm, and something that's going to happen up in heaven is going to directly influence what's going to happen here on earth. Par for the course in apocalyptic literature. Apocalypse is really concerned with accountability, that word again. Accountability for evil, and vindication and triumph of good. It assumes that God is guiding all of human history toward an outcome. The end is already written and it's good. All right. Therefore, there's reason to hope. All right. And Apocalypse was not written. Daniel and John of Patmos and Revelation, they don't write to scare people. They don't even write primarily to predict the future. They write to give a message of hope. Times are scary. We know what this is like. Wouldn't it be nice to hear that the end is already written? The last chapter is done. And it's great news. We're all going to be okay. That's why we have an apocalypse. And finally, all of this that I just told you is being communicated through a human messenger whose job it now is to convey all that to the world. And that messenger is Daniel. So instead of putting a Menti poll at the end of the lesson, I wanted to put it here at the beginning tonight. So go to menti.com, M-E-N-T-I. Gene put here in the chat, is this where today's saying the writing is on the wall comes from? You betcha. The writing on the wall comes from Daniel chapter 5. So go to menti.com. Share screen. Just one of these tonight. When you get to menti.com, enter in this code 3619 5419. 3619 5419. So what is it about the world that is being unveiled in the pandemic? And we're taking a risk here by doing kind of open response. God only knows what you're going to put on here. But just know that there are hidden forces working on us all the time. One of them that I've noticed is we've seen our individualistic culture really come out in the pandemic. That's been unveiled for us, how we can become so hyper-focused on the individual and not be concerned with, well, what's good for the whole. You really need both, but you can sway too close, too far to the extremes. Good, these are great. These are great coming in. Good people exist. Ooh, I love that. I love that. In apocalyptic literature, it's usually the bad that is being unveiled. Well, we also need to see the good being unveiled too. That was great. Fear of control by the government. Yes, definitely. That fear is being unveiled. We don't have control. It's hard to trust the word and news from anyone. That difficulty trusting people. Polarization would be another one that I would add if I could enter one. It's being unveiled. Separation. Great. These are great responses. Just give it a few more seconds. Selfishness and kindness. The bad and the good. Unveiled. Disagreement of what is truth. Good. You can see how all of these things here are working on us somehow. Not just on an individual level, but on a society level. And it's got to be someone's job to pull back the curtain and say, this is there. We got to talk about this. We need to talk about our need to work with one another. We got to talk about our selfishness here. It's there behind the scenes. We also need to talk about the good. I'm so glad y'all put the good in there too. People are good. Yes, yes. All right. So now you understand the need and the purpose of apocalyptic literature. Unveiling what sometimes we do not see. All right, let's get into some verse by verse Bible study. So Daniel chapter 7, verses 1 through 8. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay in bed. Then he wrote down the dream. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I watched, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human being, and a human mind was given to it. Another beast appeared, a second one, that looked like a bear. It was raised up on its side, had 3 tusks in its mouth among its teeth, and was told, arise, devour many bodies. After this, as I watched, another appeared like a leopard. The beast had 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth and was devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that preceded it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns when another horn appeared, a little one coming up among them. To make room for it, 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. There were eyes like human eyes in this horn, and a mouth speaking arrogantly. Now, if you have followed along with our Bible study of Daniel at any thus far, you're going to go, well, this sounds absolutely nothing like what we've covered. Well, that's exactly right. We've started part 2 of the book. Okay, no more court legends. We have gone back in time from where we were in Daniel 6. With Daniel 6, we were this Darius the Mede, who was supposed to refer to Cyrus the Great, Persian king. We've gone back in time to the last king of Babylon, Belshazzar, who was a real king, really did live and die in history. Okay. And Daniel has this vision. All right, so let's unpack it. So first, he sees these winds stirring up a great sea. That conjures up the image of Genesis chapter 1. Genesis 1 starts with God stirring up the water. God's spirit sweeps over the waters of chaos, okay? Something's happening. The sea, over and over again in the Bible, is this symbol of chaos. You just can't control the ocean. It's uncontrollable, and of destruction. There's this powerful force. Think of the flood story, right? Nothing can destroy like a flood. We know that only too well here in Houston. When Jesus walks on water, right? That's supposed to tell us, oh my gosh, here is this person who can conquer this ultimate symbol of chaos and destruction. He walks all over it. Okay, that's what Jews would hear reading this. He has conquered this sea. Okay. Also in Revelation, there's this the second vision in Revelation that John of Patmos has is of God sitting on a throne, and in front of God is a sea, is a bottle of water, and it is still. It's like it's made out of glass. It's imagery saying that here is the one, God Almighty, the eternal of days, who has conquered all chaos and destruction, even death itself, and made it still. There is peace and harmony. That's what we can expect in heaven. Okay, so we have these things being stirred up out of the sea, this image of destruction. There are 4 beasts, and I've listed them here for you just in bullet points. A lion, a bear, a leopard, and this beast that really isn't named what it is, but it has 10 horns. And note that it's supposed to be the strongest of all the beasts. This image, this passage here will become extremely important in Revelation. So I'm flipping in my Bible to Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 4. I'll just read a few verses. This is John of Patmos saying, "And I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on its horns were 10 diadems, and on its heads were blasphemous names. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth." So you see here in John of Patmos, lion, bear, beast. In Revelation, he just lumps these 4 beasts together into one terrible, evil beast, which is supposed to represent the Roman Empire. Okay. Here in, Here in Daniel, they're supposed to represent other empires. I don't think I put this later in here. These beasts are supposed to represent Babylon, the lion becoming a human. The bear with tusks is supposed to represent the Medes, the Median Empire. This leopard is supposed to represent the Persians, 4 wings and 4 heads. We think that the 4 here is the number of Persian kings before the Persian Empire fell. And then this beast with 10 horns, the strongest of all 4 of them, will be the Greeks, the Greek Empire, which Daniel is currently living under. Okay, we have seen this thus far, right? There's another, when Nebuchadnezzar had these dreams and he saw that statue made of different metals, each one referred to an empire, similar thing here. Okay, I'm going to read verses 9 through 14. "As I watched, thrones were set in place, and an ancient one took his throne. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair on his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and flowed out from his presence. 1,000 thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood attending him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. I watched then because of the noise of the arrogant words that the horn was speaking. And as I watched, the beast was put to death, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. As I watched in the night visions, I saw one like a human being coming from the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient One and was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed." All right. If I could select a chapter out of the Old Testament that every Christian should read to understand the New Testament, it would be Daniel chapter 7, because you really don't have our theology of Jesus without Daniel chapter 7. You just don't. When we read this, we go, oh, this is Jesus, right? All of this refers to Jesus and what he's supposed to be doing. It's not what Daniel was immediately writing about, but then Jesus comes around and you go, oh, this is what it was always about. Okay, notice the thrones here, verse 9. As I watched, thrones were set in place. They're in the plural. Okay, the idea is that you have thousands upon thousands of people sitting on thrones. The Ancient One, who is supposed to represent God, of course, he is just one of many thrones. Okay, the picture here is all of Israel. All of Israel is coming to sit in judgment. We are seeing a court, right? So far in Daniel, we've been in royal courts, king's courts. Well, now we're in a judge's court. We're in the courtroom, and there's not just one judge, like God. All of Israel is sitting in judgment, okay? Judging who? The beasts. The beasts, okay? Before we get to the beasts, notice the books. So let's see, verse 10, 1,000 served him, the ancient one, 10,000 times 10,000 stood attending him. The court sat in judgment, and his books were opened. Okay, so Revelation will pick up on this too. In Revelation 20, God starts to open up books, the books of what we have done in our life. It's judgment according to works. How have we lived our life? Thankfully, when we get to Revelation, there's another book, the book of life that trumps all the other books, right? And those who the Lamb has written in the book of life, that supersedes what we have done in this life. Here, what you have is all of Israel opening up their books and judging what these evil empires, these beasts, have done, the havoc they've wreaked on earth. So this beast with the arrogant horn is destroyed. Okay, we see that. So he does not pass judgment. Notice that these other beasts, their dominion, since these are empires, their kingships are taken away, but they are not destroyed. They are allowed to live for a season and a time. All that means is a long time, but not forever. Okay, it's just an indeterminate, preset, but finite amount of time. By this time, Daniel knew that those kingdoms we talked about, Babylonians, Medes, Persians, they ruled a long time, and they weren't necessarily very nice to the Jews, but they did end. They did collapse. And it's like they had been, they did not pass judgment. Then you got this one like a human being, or one like a son of man. In your translations, I'd be interested, you can put it in the chat, how your translation translate verse 13 here. I saw one like a human being. Remember, this is written in Aramaic. So literally in Aramaic, it's one like a son of man, one like a son of man. What I teach from the NRSV finds that very awkward, and so it's one like a human being, okay? Revelation will pick up on this too in chapter 14, verse 14, where one like a son of man descends. There it is, Jesus. So Jesus will call himself the Son of Man in the Gospels. It's interesting. That's one of those phrases that we use all the time to refer to Jesus, but we never really ask, well, what does it mean and where does it come from? All right, this is where it comes from. Everything we believe about that phrasing, Son of Man, comes from this chapter, Daniel chapter 7. The Son of Man is supposed to be this human figure that will come one day and have all authority to rule on behalf of all people. Okay, that's the Son of Man. This human figure who God gives authority to rule over all other human figures. Okay. For reasons that will become clearer at least later on in other chapters of Daniel. Who Daniel is probably referring to is the angel the angel Michael, the archangel Michael. We're not going to see Michael yet in this chapter, but Michael's going to come up later in subsequent chapters in Daniel. So he probably is referring to Michael, okay? We read this as Jesus, and I believe it actually ultimately is Jesus. But Daniel is referring probably to this angel Michael. If that's the case, remember, apocalyptic visions, they have this, they just assume that there's a spiritual realm and earthly realm and they interplay. Then the archangel Michael is supposed to be the spiritual equivalent to Israel in the earthly realm. If that's true, then really what Daniel is seeing is that one day Israel will be on top again. All, what is it here? All dominion, glory, and kingship will be given over to Israel to rule on behalf of all people. Now we read that in 2021 with Israel as a nation state, and we get very different images of what this means. But take all that away, and you go back to how God's purpose in creating Israel in the first place, right? God called Abram to be a blessing to all other nations, okay? Be blessed, to be a blessing, and to show all the nations what God's heart is really like. Well, here what Daniel is seeing is that vision will one day come true. Israel will finally be able to live up to its true purpose. Also remember that Daniel is writing in a time where Israel is at the lowest of the low. They're a conquered people. They can't even practice their own faith in their own temple. Daniel's saying, well, there's going to be a great reversal. And the conquered people, well, they're going to be on top. Okay. And Michael in the spiritual realm is kind of their equivalent to what's going on here on earth. Let me check the chat real quick. Son of man, I see lots of one like a son of man. Yes, son of man. One like a son of man is the more direct translation of the Aramaic. Okay. Jesus probably, no, we know Jesus spoke Aramaic. So this is where he gets it. All right. Chapter 7, verses 15 through 28. I'll probably pause in the middle here. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me, and the visions of my head terrified me. Well, who would? I approached one of the attendants to ask him the truth concerning all this. So he said that he would disclose to me the interpretation of the matter. As for these 4 great beasts, 4 kings shall rise out of the earth. We talked about this. But the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever and ever. I love how he says it 3 times. Forever, forever and ever. Eternity. Then I desired to know the truth concerning the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped what was left with its feet, and concerning the 10 horns that were on its head, and concerning the other horn which came up, and to make room, for which 3 of them fell out, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogantly, and that seemed greater than the others. I'm going to pause here and just cover kind of what we just covered, because it's a lot. So Daniel goes to this attendant who's supposed to be an angel. The idea is that Daniel has been caught up into heaven in this vision. He's seeing what's going on in the heavenly realm. So he asks an angel, hey, dude, what am I seeing here? Angel tells him. As we talked about, each one of these 4 beasts is a kingdom. I believe it's the Babylonian, Mede, Persian, and Greek empires. These holy ones of the Most High, these thousands upon thousands, are the faithful Jews. Okay? We've talked over and over again about the suppression of Judaism in Jerusalem at this time. Well, these holy ones who sit in judgment, these are the faithful. These are the ones who kept worshiping God when it was inconvenient, surely, when it was costly, when it could jeopardize their life and livelihood. These are the ones who kept the faith. Revelation will pick up on this too, where those who sit in judgment are the ones who keep the faith when it's really, really hard. Okay, verse 21. As I looked, this horn made war with the holy ones and was prevailing over them. Okay, what's interesting is he's in heaven, but he is seeing a war that is happening on earth. Okay, does that make sense? So Daniel has been caught up in a heavenly vision. He looks and he sees this horn back on earth, making war with the holy ones, the faithful Jews. And the horn was prevailing over them. On earth, the horn is winning the war. Verse 22, until the Ancient One came, then judgment was given for the holy ones of the Most High, and the time arrived when the holy ones gained possession of the kingdom. So he's seen this war play out on earth, and then it's over when the Ancient One, when God comes, okay? And judgment and judgment and authority is given over to the faithful Jews, okay? Verse 23. This is what he said. As for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on earth that shall be different from all the other kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth and trample it down, break it into pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall rise, and another shall arise after them. This one shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, shall swear out the holy ones of the Most High, and shall attempt to change the sacred seasons and the law. And they, the holy ones, shall be given into his power for a time, 2 times, and half a time. Then the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away and be consumed and totally destroyed. The kingship and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the holy ones of the Most High. Their kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey them. Here the account ends. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly terrified me. My face turned pale, but I kept the matter in my mind. All right, so we learn that the horns, okay, these horns of this fourth beast are kings of a fourth kingdom. This is supposed to be Greece, the Greek Empire. And there's this arrogant horn that is unlike all the other kings. And this, of course, is this king that we've talked about over and over again in Daniel, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. He's the guy who suppressed all Judaism in Jerusalem. I'm here in verse 25. He shall speak words against the Most High. That means he shall commit blasphemy against God, forbid worship of God. He shall attempt to change the sacred seasons and the law. What Antiochus did was forbid the observance of Jewish rituals in Jerusalem, which operated on seasons, and the law forbid actually observance of the law in the temple. You were supposed to offer the appropriate sacrifices. Antiochus didn't let it happen. Okay. And it looks like, as Daniel is seeing, that this horn, King Antiochus, is going to win. He's going to have his way with the Jews, the holy ones, for a time, 2 times, and half a time. That is 3.5 times, right? Or half of forever. The number 7 in Hebrew is perfection, forever. Half of 7 is 3.5, a time, 2 times, half a time, 3.5. What Daniel is saying is this persecution y'all are enduring right now, where you can't practice your belief, you're even getting killed for it. It's going to last a while. It's going to feel like forever, but it won't be forever. This will end. This will end, and soon. And soon. Now, what does all this mean? I just wanted to summarize these things in 5 points before you go on to chapter 8. We're going to get a few verses into chapter 8, and I'm going to leave y'all in a cliffhanger so that you come back next week. Okay, so what does this mean? It means the kingdoms of this earth will pass away. All right, that may not sound like good news to you. You may like how things are right now. Well, that depends on how oppressed you are. For Daniel's people, these are very oppressed people. They wanted the kingdoms of the earth to pass away. Our refugee members and at Gethsemane and our immigrants coming from Cuba and other Central American countries, they want their kingdoms and governments to pass away. They did not benefit from them in the slightest. That's why they're here and not there. Okay? For Daniel's people, the passing away of all earthly kingdoms is very good news. Then second, there will be judgment of evil. There will be accountability. This King Antiochus guy, he was like Hitler for these people. There's going to be judgment. He's going to get his, okay? Third, oppression will continue. Just note that Daniel doesn't promise a quick and easy release from all this. Oppression will continue, but it won't be forever. So stay faithful. Stay faithful while you can. Fourth, note how those who are oppressed but faithful, they become the judge. So just, friends, just keep track of all the people that we pass by every day. Do you tip those people? Because one day they may be opening up your book. right? I think about our housekeepers at the church. They may sit in judgment of me one day, and I'm so glad there's a book of life, right? They're going to be the ones who sit on the judgment seat. And finally, God's kingdom is coming and will last forever. We've talked about so far in our study that the whole kingdom of God image that Jesus uses comes from Daniel, comes from this. There will be a kingdom. There will be a way things are done here on earth that are perfect, right? Where everything is done by love and grace, and it will last forever. Good news for everybody. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. To make the most of our time, we're going to go ahead and start chapter 8, but I will be minding the chat. All right, chapter 8, verses 1 through 4, and then we'll go through to verse 14. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, so 3 years have passed, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me at first. In the vision, I was looking and saw myself in Susa, the capital, in the province of Elam, and I was by the river Ulai. I looked up and saw a ram standing beside the river. It had 2 horns. Both horns were long, but one was longer than the other, and the longer one came up second. Okay. I saw the ram charging westward and northward and southward. All beasts were powerless to withstand it, and no one could rescue from its power. It did as it pleased and became strong. Okay, so here is this this vision of a ram, of a male sheep. All right, this is a full 3 years after his first vision. We're still with the last king of the Babylonian Empire, Belshazzar. This ram, which I'll go ahead and tell you for next week, is going to represent a kingdom, one of the kingdoms of the earth. It charges to the north, south, and west, not to the east. Keep that in mind. The empires of this time, they never made it really far into India, way to the east. They conquered to the north, south, and west, going toward Europe. And this ram defeats every other animal. This is going to be a really powerful empire. Okay, verse 5. As I was watching, a male goat appeared. So we've had a ram, now we have a goat. A male goat appeared from the west, coming across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. The goat had a horn between its eyes. It came toward the ram with the 2 horns that I had seen standing beside the river. And it ran at it with savage force. I saw it approaching the ram. It was enraged against it and struck the ram, breaking its 2 horns. The ram did not have power to withstand it. It threw the ram down to the ground and trampled upon it. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from its power. Then the male goat grew exceedingly great, but at the height of its power, the great horn was broken, and in its place there came up 4 prominent horns toward the 4 winds of heaven. Whew. So there's a goat coming up from the west, charging east, defeats the ram. There's a big horn between its eyes, okay? And apparently this horn is about to be replaced by 4 others, okay? 9 through 14. Out of one of them grew another horn, a little one, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. It grew as high as the host of heaven. It threw down to the earth some of the host and some of the stars and trampled on them. Even against the prince of the host, it acted arrogantly. It took the regular burnt offering away from him and overthrew the place of his sanctuary. Because of wickedness, the host was given over to it together with the regular burnt offering. It cast truth to the ground and kept prospering in what it did. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one that spoke, For how long is this vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and host to be trampled? And he answered him, for 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. So in this ram, this goat, you had that big horn between its eyes. Now it's gone, replaced by 4 horns. Okay. Then there's another little horn. We've already seen a little horn tonight that grows as high as heaven. And what it does is it starts war up in the heavenly realm. Okay, so I'm here in verse 10. It grew as high as the host of heaven. So we were on earth. Now we're up in heaven. It threw down to earth some of the host and some of the stars. Okay, so in apocalyptic literature, angels and stars can be the same thing. Okay, you look up into the night sky, you see that star. Oh, that's Gabriel. Oh, you see that one? That's Michael. Okay, angels and stars can be the same. Then this horn insults the prince of the heavenly host. This is supposed to be God up in heaven. All right. And it took the regular burnt offering away. So we started out on earth and we went up to heaven. Now we're back on earth. We're back in the temple. Okay. And these holy ones here on earth, the faithful Jews, they are being defeated by this little horn. Okay. The horn interrupts worship in the sanctuary. Okay. Takes away the regular burnt offering. Creates this, I'm here in verse 13. Takes away the burnt offering. There's this transgression that makes desolate. That will be an idol to Zeus that is built in the temple, the desolating sacrilege, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled. Remember, King Antiochus, he stopped all Jewish worship in the temple, and he slaughtered the host, the Jews. There's dialogue between 2 of these holy ones or angels. Which one are they? Yes, divine and spirit, divine and earthly coming together. How long is this persecution going to last? The answer is really interesting. 2,300 evenings and mornings. In the Jewish temple, there was supposed to be a sacrifice in the evening and in the morning. Okay, start off the day, which in the Jewish calendar happens at sundown. Start off the day in the evening with a sacrifice, then midday in the morning a sacrifice. So if it's 23 evenings and mornings, divide that in by 2, now you got 1,150 days. Okay, so how long is that King Antiochus guy going to desecrate the temple in Jerusalem and forbid Judaism? Daniel says 1,150 days. That is about the amount of time that King Antiochus actually in history does desecrate the temple. It's about 3 years. And that's the amount of time. He prophesies it and says, this is going to last about 3 years. So y'all hunker down. We're going to be in this for a while. On that note, I'm going to leave you because we're at time. Next week, we're going to start off with chapter 8, verse 15. The angel Gabriel, yes, that Gabriel from like the Annunciation of the birth of Jesus, will interpret this vision for Daniel, and he'll explain what the ram, the goat, the horns mean. He didn't see this coming. One of them is Alexander the Great. There's your teaser for next week. Check in the chat. If y'all have any questions or prayer requests coming in the following week, shoot them to me. We are now in the really hard part of Daniel. Everything was teeing up to this. This is tough. So that's why I'm going to send out the slides again so you can review. I'll send out the recording and review. Just have fun with this and see the message of hope within. Y'all have a really great night. Can't wait to see you next week.